And you think, hey, why would I add a bullet impact sound to a sword flash impact sound? Well, the reason is hi guys, and welcome back to another GameDev Answers video. My name is still Marcus and I'm a solo game developer currently working on my game Raidborn, which is a first-person sandbox action RPG. Check out my other videos if you want to find out more about it. And today's topic is sound design and sounds in general. And when I'm finished talking about the subject, what is sound design, what is it made of, what is going wrong with sound design, I will show you an example how a sound is built up, which is very interesting, so stay tuned. Okay, but let's start with the topic. I think sound design and sounds in general are something which is often underestimated. Because actually, sounds are very important. Of course, this always depends on the kind of game you're making, but sound design is something which gives the actions you do a feeling. And it's the flash on the ribs of the gameplay, kind of. And it's funny, like how AAA games relatively often have a bad sound design going on, and I don't really understand why. And I have an example brought with me here, because I think the shooting sounds from GTA 5, which is really a game which has millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for producing the game, and I wonder why the hell do they have such bad shooting sound. But listen yourself. So as you could hear, and as you may have experienced yourself when you played the game, those sounds really don't sound very interesting. They sound dull and boring actually, and doesn't give you a nice feeling for the weapon. Of course, there are a lot of other examples where it totally works. I just find it confusing that some of the largest games there are fail in the sound design, which is so important for certain aspects. And where it is especially important are racing games and military shooters. And for example, Battlefield always did a great job on sound design, and that adds a lot to the game, and it's maybe one of the ingredients which made the game so successful and which makes it also so good. And the same goes for racing games. However, I have to say, for racing games, most of the games do a pretty good job. I mean, most of the racing games have nice car sounds. But still, here, if you fail with the car sounds, it can break the whole game and make the driving just boring. I mean, I remember, funny story here, I remember when I played Sega Rally, was a racing game some time ago, on my Xbox 360, which I got for Christmas. And I did not have speakers, so I only had a display which had no speakers, and I had no external speakers back then. So I had to play this racing game without sound. I mean, I had fun with it because I didn't have anything else to play, but I remember when I finally got speakers, which meant I had sound, that it was a totally different experience, and I could now play the game very differently because I hear the motor sounds and I can hear when like opponents are driving by, or it was really a whole other experience, was easier to control. And yeah, it's crazy how much difference sound can make. But let's talk a little bit about how sound effects do work. So the interesting thing about sounds is that they are actually an abstraction of an actual sound, and most of the time are also oversaturated and do sound much more rich and full, like they would sound in real life. So a normal punch, if you punch somebody, it sounds not very interesting and sounds basically like nothing. But if you create a punch sound for a game, you want to have it very oversaturated, very extreme, and that is how you create sounds. And you also layer many different sounds onto each other to create the final sound. And sometimes there are very weird sounds, like you can crush a melon and then hit on a leather jacket or something like that, mix that together, and then you get a nice punch sound. And that's really funny how you can create sounds for games. And now, as promised, I will give you an example of how a sound is built up. I'm going to show you is a sound from my game Raidborn, which is a flash sword impact sound I built. So here we have the sound, and I will now step by step enable different layers, so that you ultimately get an idea how the sound is built up and how it sounds in the end. So the first thing we have is a nice sword impact flash sound, and gives a nice impact and also a little bit of a bloody feel. Okay, the second sound is also very important, and I think with the first one they are the most important one, the ones who really make the feel of the sound. But listen yourself. Okay, the next sound I layered on top of these is a blood squeeze sound, really, which adds that bloody liquid kind of sound to it. The next one is also relatively important, which is, as you can see, an armor leather impact sound, which adds more strength to the sound, and also is important because in the game you most of the time hit enemies with any kind of armor, so this makes just sense in the whole sound design of the game. Next sound is something relatively weird, which is a bullet impact sound. And you think, hey, why would I add a bullet impact sound to a sword flash impact sound? Well, the reason is it gives a nice metal impact sound like a sword would give, and also adds to the heaviness of the sound. But listen yourself. Okay, the last thing again is a slicing sound, just to make it a little bit more, how should I say, fleshy, if that's even a word, I don't know, but make it more bloody and more violent, but it's very subtle. And here is how the sound ultimately sounds like. Listen. So as you can see, normally a sound effect is built up from really different kind of sounds. Sometimes they even have nothing to do with the actual sound, and that it is an abstraction and also an oversaturation of the actual sound. So my conclusion for this topic is that yes, sound effects are very important and often underestimated, and sounds are an abstraction and should be oversaturated, and it's very important to understand that the sound you hear in a game is not similar to the real sound actually. And finally, it depends on the game of course, but especially for racing games, military shooters, and also for RPGs, it's very important that the sound design is right, and it's a very important ingredient for atmosphere, as explained in my last video, which I talked about that topic. And yeah, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you find this interesting. And if not, tell me why, and tell me what you think about the whole video. Tell me what you think about the subject. If you also underestimated sound design, and if you knew that it is so important, and if you knew how a sound is built. And last but not least, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it and it was an interesting topic for you. Have a nice day and see you in the next video.